Hey, what's going on, everybody? Hey, I'm here with the one and only Rob Conley. We're going to be talking about a lot of things today. We're going to be talking about the OSR. We're going to talk about gaming. We're going to talk about his Kickstarter that is happening right now. And Rob is the author, by the way, of things like Blackmarsh, the Isle of Pyade, everybody's favorite drink, and also how to make a fantasy sandbox, which I just got through running 33 steps and created my own setting, which we'll eventually talk about that first. But welcome, Rob, to the channel.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I'm stoked for you, Rob, because this is a great opportunity for me to actually sit and talk with the author with which I use their product to then create my own setting, which we're going to be talking about your setting today. So it's kind of a meta type of thing. I think maybe it's a wormhole or time space continuum that's happening here, something like that.
Sure.
Sure. Well,
Sure.
hey,
I mean, we talk regularly on different chats, so it's going to
yeah.
be a continuation of that. But
Well, it
yeah,
is.
your videos are great, and what I like about them is you don't follow my methods precisely. You put your own spin on them, which is, I think, great for people to see
Well,
because it,
yeah. Yeah, I'm not I'm a bit of a contrarian in some ways, just because when I read something, and I was like this in school too, that if they taught me to do it one way, I always wanted to do it another way. I could get there quicker or faster, or I already know where we're going with this. So it's kind of built into my DNA as far as that goes. But the process was stellar, so it helped me get exactly where I needed to go. I took few creative rabbit trails to get there, but we got there.
that's good because I try to. I mean, I have the Tomb of World Building back there, and it's excellent. Finch does an excellent, and there's another one called Sandbox Generator, and what they share in common are a lot of wonderful random tables to get the creative juice. And I didn't feel I could compete with that, so to speak. I didn't have anything new to contribute. Sure, I have my own collection, cribbed from all my Harn stuff down there and other
Yes.
sources.
Yes.
But I figured that the people could use a book that would coach them through the process, provide a structure and a explanation, a worked out example and that's my goal. So what I encourage people to do to get my book, either get the Sandbox Generator. I forgot the author's name, but it's always up there on the under $5 list on
Sure is.
Drive-Thru, and or Matt Finch Tomb of World of Building, and use that in conjunction to help you flesh out. So if you're stuck for settlement ideas on one of my steps, you can use that instead. You can use that to get those ideas.
Oh, absolutely. And I did use Tome of World Building. I also used I think I used the Nomicon. I used a few different little things. You kind of, I primarily used the 33 steps from your book, and then just kind of, when you need to break something, like you said, kind of break the ice a little bit, you got to kind of look around and see what else is out there and what's going on. Um, but hey, let's talk about you and your
Okay.
stuff here. Tell us, first of all, this is your first time on my channel, so there may be be some folks here who don't know who you are and things you've done and that kind of thing. Why don't you tell everybody about a little bit about your gaming history and all that kind of good stuff.
Well, I started in the late 70s, primarily with wargaming, SPI and Avalon Hill. People forget that wasn't just a D&D boom era. There was the boom era of hex and counter war games. And I played 1776, Blitzkrieg, uh, Panzer Blitz, Panzer Leader, um, and but along the way discovered D&D, the Holmes box edition, which I'll turn my camera, which is up there.
Uh-huh.
It is not the original box set I own that got smashed, but I did discover, thanks to the guys at Arcanum, I discovered the exact printing that I had, and I was able to obtain it before the collector prices went crazy in the last decade. And it has the original dice. And uh, and when I played it, it was like awesome. And for me, the thing is I like world building from reading Tolkien and the
Hmm.
Lord and the Return of the King appendices, and I read the Silmarillion, and I thought that was awesome. I mean, Lord of the Rings was better as a story, but as part of the learning about Middle Earth, some Silmarillion was great too. And I could see, hey, I could put these doodles I've been doing for world building to practical use. And I kind of, when I DM, um, I kind of approached it like a war game on steroids. I mean, I did the module, I did the Port Town Dungeon, I did B1, which was the module that came with my box set. Then
Right.
later, the Village of Hamlet, which I got for Christmas, and White Plume Mountain, which I also got. And but really, I like the fact when the players got high enough level, they could start, thinking about taking over kingdoms and founding their kingdoms. And I had no problem with them doing that. And as a wargamer, I could give them a challenge without being unfair about it. I knew how to give them a challenge despite being in a junior high.
Hmm.
And, I just copied the war games I liked best. And, and everybody had a lot of fun. And, but really, what really kicked things off for me as a DM was when in the next campaign. So I started off with Greyhawk, didn't like the howling emptiness of the 30-mile hex. And to be fair, I was in junior high. I didn't have the life experience
Sure, sure.
to think of all this stuff. And then
Right.
I spotted the Waterlands of High Fantasy in a store called the Dandelion on the spinner rack for $8. Not only was it affordable, but it did what Traveler did, is populate all these hexes with content. And then I figured out that they didn't really like Greyhawk. Unlike Greyhawk, they didn't have a whole lot of kingdoms or realms. You could just make up your own. So that was the ticket, and I had everybody I opened a gate between Greyhawk and the Waterlands, and people arrived there and carved out their own realm. And but really, the kicker was the next campaign. I decided to keep all that and make what the players did part of the background of the campaign. It didn't really come into play at first because they were like off in one corner, up the far northeast corner, the Valley of Ancient. That's where all that took place. And the next campaign I started in City State, but I quickly became known for two things. First, I became known as the DM who let players trash their setting because there were a lot of DMs treat their settings as precious little jewels, and if you tamper them with them, they get really bent out of shape and brought down that blue bolt.
Precious. They're so
Precious, yes.
precious.
And I didn't care. It wouldn't be easy. Um, like I said, I was a war gamer and I didn't make it easy, but
So
they
when
had
you
a
were doing your world building, was this in college or was it when you were still just a teenager playing? Did you start figuring out, oh, I'm gonna start building this whole deal out?
yeah, when I was in high school.
Okay.
After I would say it really kicked into gear after after my freshman year in high school because role playing didn't become our main activity because most of us in my age group weren't aware of OD&D or the collector's white box set. So all we had was basic, and that was level 1 through 3,
Right.
and then Holmes basic, and then we saw the monster manual, the player's handbook, but we didn't have that issue of Dragon magazine as a preview, so we had to wait for 79 and the DMG to come out before we had everything we needed to start playing the full campaign. And after that came out, that became our primary form of gaming.
Did you call it Majestic Fantasy Realms then? Did you come up with the title for that then?
Well, actually, the title came from an issue of a late issue of Pegasus, like 9 or 10, and Judges Guild um, put out a preview of upcoming titles, and one of them was the Majestic Waterlands, a campaign overview. And I thought, I want that. And then they went out of business. So I never saw that. But I thought for the longest time that the title was Majestic Waterland. Now, there came a time when I redrew the maps after they were falling apart, I got another replacement set. I laminated, but I thought they would fall apart. So I took a geography minor in college, and I knew how to use light tables and technical pen. So I redrew by my hand uh, some of the maps of the Waterlands, and that's when the setting became my Majestic Waterland, because one of the things I did was make the scale a 12.5 mile hex instead of 5 mile hex, because that's what Harn did, and each hex equals 5 miles of walking, which meant I expanded the areas you can venture in. And I did things like play around with the towns, made them castles, or made them, and then put keeps. So I expanded the setting basically, and put all the stuff I did in previous campaigns as part of the background. So then, flash forward 10 years from then, around 2000, I got a hold of Bob Bledsaw, and I was talking with him, and we were in one conversation by phone, and he said, Rob, why do you keep calling it Waterland? Well, isn't that the name of your setting? No. Well, sure it was. You guys said it was in one of your Pegasus magazines. Oh, I don't remember that. Well, what do you call it? Well, Waterland of High Fantasy. Well, I called it the Waterland. I said, oh, okay. But I didn't push the issue. It's like, okay, it's the guy who wrote the thing. I guess, what, okay. I guess I got that title for my own take. Yippee. I don't have to change it if I ever do something with it.
That's right.
And, uh, although I knew enough about IP that I doubt I would get to do something with it. And so years later, then 10 years later, when after Bob Sr. unfortunately passed away, and I was dealing with his son, I did the maps for the campaign map for City State of the Sea King. And instead of getting paid, I said, "Can I have a license?" And he said, "Sure." And I said, I only got a license to use the map and some of the place names, but I got the right to publish the Majestic Waterland as is, which I was in the process of repurposing into what I was calling then the Land of Adventure,
Okay.
uh, in my Points of Light stuff. And but it was a lot of work. And with this license, I could just take that big crate full of notes and use them directly. And so I was a happy camper until things went down. And now I'm back to working on my land adventure, which I now call the Majestic Fantasy Realm. Because, wow, I like the word majestic. It
Yes.
distinguishes my stuff.
100%, 100%. Let me ask you a question. When you were developing this, and you were thinking to yourself, I mean, were you yourself following these 33 kind of, or is that retrospective and saying, oh, this is where I started, and then you kind of like just you reverse engineered it in some way and said, oh, that's where I went from I did that. Was
Yeah,
that your process?
yeah, I reverse engineered. So that's going to be a two-part answer. So to answer your question directly, is I reverse engineer, and it crystallized when I wrote up the points of light. And then I kind of have it in the back of my mind, and then I did it and I started writing those posts, and then I did Blackmarsh as the proof that my steps would work, and documented it. Yep, that. So that Blackmarsh was a spur of the moment project to help the Delving Deepers guys, because they were wondering what they could put in their box set, and I said, hey, I did those points of light. And one of those settings can fit in the page count that you have, which was 16 pages. So I followed my steps and did that. But really, how my Waterlands came together was piecemeal. I had retcons, and the biggest retcon was in the Eight Ladies when I redrew the map. And that I redrew one of the reasons I redrew the maps that way is because for one campaign, Tim and Dwayne, my Tim of Gothridge Manor, if you guys know who he is, and my friend Dwayne, who gamed with us forever, um, they traveled from city state of the Invincible Overlord to the city state of the World Emperor, known as Furdistan, and it only took a few days. And it's like, Rob, really? And I said, yeah. Damn, man, the way you always presented it, always we would figure it'd take a couple months, or a month at least. And so with my maps falling apart, I decided, well, if I expand the scale to that 5 league scale, then yeah, it would take about a month, 4 weeks to 6 weeks to go from city state of Vincible Overlord to Verdistan. So I killed two birds with that one stone. I got new maps, and I got made my settings conform to players' expectations, as well as giving me a lot more room to flesh out things. But no, I cobbled the Majestic Waterland was forged through actual play. So, half the material in there and half of it that gets ported over to Majestic for Fantasy Realm are the fault of my players. So, for example, if I ever come out with the Sea State of Eastgate, which is my take on the Sea State of Vincible Overlord, um, if you wonder why the city guards, walk around with the heaviest possible crossbow that you can carry, that effectively you can only fire once per combat, it's because the players played those city guards and they were like weenie, well, we were playing GURPS, but they were playing the equivalent of first level GURPS characters, 50 points. And they had to deal with 125, 175 point adventurers equivalent to fifth to sixth level characters and somehow arrest them. And the trick they came up with, if according to GURPS, we can carry around a strength 20, and that GURPS has a similar scale for attribute to D&D. So a 20 strength crossbow, we can only fire it once, but if we all carry one of it, and we can keep it cocked for our patrol, so we don't have to crank it up. So all we have to do is load a bolt, shoot it. All of us shoot it. At least two of us is going to hit, and that's just going to wreck the NPC. And it was right. It worked. It turned into a fight that was to the whatever adventuring party they were trying to deal with. So they had the advantage to one to where it was more of an even fight, and because they fought in an organized fashion with like shield in front, pike in the back, they were often able to win the day.
Yeah, and I think too, I like I said, I have not run as for as much as I've written, I've not run it yet. I will eventually. But knowing the people we know and how they will play in this, it
Mm-hmm.
could be just life altering. Like I'll be sitting there going, "What are we doing? Now we're blowing things up. Now we're like, okay." But you know what? It's kind of like the you can't be like the 40-year-old virgin where everything is still in the box, right? You got to take the comic book out and read it. You got to take the toys out and play with it, and you got to let people run around your setting and mess it up or do whatever it is. There's whatever they're not going to mess it up. They'll probably make it better. You just got to get over the initial shock of now that they've killed somebody, that you killed somebody in town, maybe that you created there. But hey, that's the way it goes.
Yeah, and then the thing is, though, the trick is going to keep using that setting anytime you run a fantasy role playing game. Even if you switch system to another fantasy role playing game like Shadow Dark, what are you tending to use this with?
Well, probably Shadow Dark and whatever. Maybe
Okay,
like
so
the
say
5e
so
or other
say you
things.
decided to try with 5e or Osric, keep it and then just keep layering that campaign, and within a couple of years, you'll find that adding what your players did as part of the background will just make for a better. And don't be afraid to retcon a little. It, don't do it during a campaign.
Right.
That's not a good idea. I learned that in the 80s.
Don't bring
Don't.
back that NPC that got obliterated or
Right,
whatever.
right.
Hey, what's that guy
But
doing back?
but it's
That's his twin
okay.
brother.
But it's okay to tweak things in between campaigns a little. You don't want to
Sure.
do like you don't want to nullify what the players did, and
Right.
you'll just have a much better. At the end of it all, you'll have this awesome setting that will be yours.
Well, I agree, and I think that's if you're watching this and you're saying, "Look, I want to try something," go ahead and try it. Just go ahead and do it. Look, it took me a little bit of time. It took me a little bit of effort, I had a map. Rob, gave me this basically these steps, this map that I could do it with. So, and it's given me, I don't know what is it, 6, 7, 8 now zines that
Hmm.
you can get. All the links will be down in the thing though, but all of this came from just working through the steps, and there's plenty of challenges with that as well. I mean, I had to think about things that I had never thought about. I never thought about economics. I never thought about where people were getting their liquor from. Like, so I had to create, like I was just thinking the other day, I have to put a distillery over there by the river so that just Skyreach can get its liquor, because they're not near the river, not near a giant water source or anything, so they gotta get it from somewhere. So, but then that makes for obviously more adventure hooks and those type of things. So, but that's the challenge. If you're willing to think it through, the creativity will come. If you just push through just a little bit, then I think the sparks start to go.
And you can do it with a light touch. I mean, you don't have to run. I mean, with all due forgiveness with Alexander Macris, you don't have to run an economic simulation as ACKS. Although I do recommend it reading at the resources so you can get a sense of how it's
Yes.
supposed to hang together.
Yes.
Because, I mean, I'll be honest, with the Majestic Fantasy Realms, my eye is always on playability, understandability, and while realism isn't at the bottom of the heap, it was underneath those. So I have realms with maybe 2 or 3 settlements, whereas in my Majestic Waterlands, that would be like, well, like what you did when I heard you chose the population density of northern France during the Middle Age. I about blanched. It's like, oh God, that I hope he doesn't really follow through with that, because he's going to find that's going to quickly spiral out of control with that many people. Because we're talking a couple 100,000 people along that area, and that's a lot to manage.
Yeah, we didn't go. I didn't go that far. I put the brakes on that
Yeah, yeah.
for sure.
So there's a certain point where the detail becomes sufficient.
Right. Right. So your players understand that that you're playing in a lived-in world, that there's a lot of things going on, some moving parts here and there, that this comes from there and that goes from there, and this is how that part works. And that's really what it's about, is the immersion part of saying, hey, we're playing in a real world, a world in which you can play in that has a facsimile of my characters can live in here and understand, go places and do things as a sandbox is. You're going to
Yeah,
run into things.
and another important thing is you put a distillery in there, right?
Yeah.
Because that you thought that's what the economics of the area. But really, where it comes out to play, it's not the fact that you have a distillery in there. You have an NPC who is a distiller, and that's where the whole thing where you rather show than tell, where you
Hmm.
show your work in the distillery by role playing the NPCs who are impacted by the economic. So it's the distiller's problems that the players deal with, not the problem of the distillery.
Right. 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 Whatever the issue is, whether it's any number of things that their your supplies are getting jacked on the road, and that's an encounter. They got to go get whoever's jumping the stuff, and they're not getting their supplies and that kind of stuff. So absolutely. But let's go ahead and let's talk about your Kickstarter, Rob, because let me ask this question: when did you decide that, hey, it's time to go north into the Majestic Fantasy Realm? Say the north needs some help. What sparked that to say, I need to go up there? We need to figure that out.
Well, what helped was, so I started off with Southlands in Points
Mm-hmm.
of Light, and then I did Blackmarsh, and I said, well, I'm going to put Blackmarsh north of Southland. And then I did the Wild North as for fight on number 3, but it was set as a Waterlands map to the north of map 5 Valon. And the license for that was limited. I don't, even with my Majestic Waterlands license, I didn't have the right to work with the actual Waterland. My fairly. This is not a complaint uh, about the about Bob Letts the second in Judges Guild. No, he had other projects that dealt with the Wildlands proper, and I respected that. And but I wanted to use that material because it was all original material on my part. And so I reworked. So I decided at one point, okay, I'm going to at some future date, I'm going to rework it and set it to the north of Blackmarsh. And so I reworked the southern third of the map, and I released that as part of a just a map only product showing a combined version of a little bit of that Blackmarsh combined with Southland and a few areas around that. So when my license with Judges Guild sunsetted, I had to decide what my project was going to be. So I decided I was going to come out with the basic rules for my Majestic Fantasy RPG, so I get experience with that first. Then I was going to finally get my How to Make a Fantasy Sandbox done and publish it as a book. And then the centerpiece of my future endeavor was going to be the Majestic Fantasy Realm, which is what I decided the title of my setting would be, not Lands of Adventure. And of course, because I have all this material, Southland, Blackmarsh, Wild North, I was going to do it as 4 12-inch by 18 maps. One of them is tiled the Great Glacier, the Wild North, and Blackmarsh again, and Northport. And then I had a lot of new content to write because despite having those 3 products, that only covered half what I needed. And plus, I was doing 12-inch by 18 in maps. See, with Blackmarsh, it's possible for a reader, I don't need much of an overview. The reader can read through the whole thing, which is not a whole lot of pages, and kind of grasp what all the intricacies of the different realms are just from reading it straight through. That is simply not possible. So a critical aspect of this project is making the overviews pull their weight, and so people are prepared to use the chapters that are list of terrain, list of locale, like the Blackmarsh style stuff.
Well, I was going to ask you what the page count was going to be because these little books here, I mean, I think are fantastic anyway for somebody just to pick up. There'll be links below and all that stuff to grab them. But I mean, is it going to be similar to this? I mean, because it's going to be, like I said, it's going to be like 38 pages here, and for the Isle of Pyade, I think is 75. What are you
Yeah,
hoping the page count's going to be for
it's going to be
Northern?
about 200-page letter size.
Wow, that's beefy.
Yeah, yeah. I thought it was going to be a little less work, but it turns out the interconnections. I knew the interconnections were going to multiply by the square. Geometric. By the
Sure,
square, the square.
right.
You double the map. You don't. If you double the map size, you don't create twice the work. You create 4 times the work. But somehow this being wound up being a little bit more than that uh, because of the overviews, and so I think in the future I might focus more on the letter size, and
Okay.
and then if I get a bunch of them in a single area region, I might do this 4 map deal again.
Okay.
But I'm not looking to make this a regular basis. In
Well,
fact, in
sure.
my next project, so I already know what my next 1, 2, 3, 4 projects are.
All right.
They're going to be the towns of the northern marches because I had to put that on the cutting room floor because the word count was already over 100,000 words.
Phew.
So that's 10 towns done more or less in the cities of Harn style. Those who are familiar with it, the word count is it's not going to be what they currently publish as cities of Harn, but not as terse as the original because that was a little bit too terse, but a
Hmm.
little bit more. Um, then it's going to be a Greyhawk style gazetter of the Majestic Fantasy Realm.
Ah, okay.
And that should be the size of the Greyhawk folio. I made sure in my outlines, in my test note. I made sure it was going to come in that word count. But again, adding that to this project
Yep.
would be a bridge too far, you
Sure.
know. And
Sure. Well, what can
I didn't want to be like the British at Arnhem and had to retreat. So
that's right. Well, what can people expect in the northern reaches? What if they were to go adventuring there? What might they find there?
okay, so this is the four maps,
Okay. And the size of each map is usually, what did you say, 12 by
12 by 18 inches, and
18 inches.
I'll bring over the maps. I have full size proofs to show you,
Okay.
and then I'll have to scroll. So this is the entire Majestic Fantasy Realms and the
Right.
Northern Marches. Can you see my cursor?
I can.
Yeah, this is the Northern Marches. This is the area that I am focusing on.
Okay.
And like Traveler, I have in the base file for this, this is all gridded out.
Well, give us a little background. Pick anything on there. I'm interested in the dragon spine. So, what might I find over in the dragon spine? What trouble could my character get into over there?
Uh, well, I haven't really fleshed it out much, but the Dragon Spine is from my Majestic Waterlands.
Hmm.
In Eastgate is my version of City State, and down here where this hand is, there's a desert, and there is our tribes of reptile men, which are like desert dwelling lizard men
Ah,
that live here. And there are several volcanoes along the dragon spine, including layers of red dragons. Um, I do know there is a cache of the gods from the Dawn Wars when the demons briefly ruled creations, and the gods had to help the free people fight back. And they had supply caches for the rebels to use, and one of them is still maintained in case the demons ever break free of the abyss.
mhm.
So that's one of the things in Dragon Spine. I know this is an arid area with more reptile men. Ramos is the my version of Rome. It is the where the Bright Empire originally came from, which you can
Oh.
see. The purple area is the area once controlled by the Bright Empire, but they expand through the Azure Sea, and then this there are a couple advantageous flat terrain. The mountain barriers here are low, so it's very easy to up this and go upriver to here and explore this region. So that's why they have a
Mhm.
little tongue of land.
Right.
And then this region is the Empire of Viridia, which is ruled by demons. Basically, at the end of the Dawn Wars, the demons were trapped in the abyss, and the gods sealed up the abyss with uh, the abyss is actually connected to the world. There is a spot where you can go to and guarded by dragons in the service of the gods. Uh, that is the actual portal to the main entrance to the abyss, and it's warded by the chromatic crystals. And however, a powerful human mage was foolish enough to steal one of the crystals, and that opened up just a tiny crack for the weakest of the demonic races to escape, and those happened to be the green-skinned Viridians. So they escaped the abyss and they sailed into the Trident Gulf and took over this region. And they established, there were three empires of Viridia that rose and fall. Their capital was always Verdalis, their capital city. And and while the Bright Empire was in existence, they were one of their uh, chief rivals.
Ah. Now, do you have any are you including things like new classes or subclasses or anything like that within the northern reaches?
Um, Not detailed. That's going to be in my Majestic Fantasy RPG. but I
Right.
do mention them, and I have conversion notes for them, so so people know how to use them with other systems if they don't want to use my Majestic Fantasy. For
Right.
example, I talk about Thoughthian mages, which is just which they can just treat as magic users, as
Hmm.
part of a magical order. So
Yeah. I was going to ask you too, are we, is your Kickstarter physical books or PDFs only or both?
both,
Okay.
and they're print on demand.
Okay.
So here is the map of the that the people will be getting. It's
Mhm.
divided into 4 maps, but this is the combined version, which I will be including as part of the as a JPEG in the file. So up here is the region known as the Wild North. It is home to the Rurosin, a group of Vikings who came and conquered native people known as the Sorobs, and it's you can think of it as a fantasy version of Russia. And when
Hmm.
they intermarried with the Sorobs, they became a new people known as the Rurosin, and due to their history, which you can read about if you back my Kickstarter, uh, they divide into warring principalities, basically Orenburg, Tiver, Tyamin, Orsink, and Sudsdale. And this whole land was once covered by the Great Glacier, which retreated, and that's why you see all these swamps and forests that just literally scraped the land and left all these lakes and stuff behind. And there was once when the Great Glacier covered the Wild North, there was an empire called the Empire of the Thuls, who had wizards ruled by wizards who mastered ice magic, and so their empire fell as the Great Glacier retreated, and their artifacts and ruins dot the landscape around here.
Yeah, and I like how when you talked earlier about just even putting referencing things within your products that are not fully fleshed out is I think a really fun way to just to give the DM something to play with, something that says, well, that's not fleshed out, but I could do that. Like for me, I have little things like I talk about wasteland magic,
Mm-hmm.
which could be its own class, its own thing, where you're using this kind of, almost like survivalist magic type of stuff, that you get from, the wastelands that you're in, from the horrors and things that have gone on, but leaving little notes, like leaving little breadcrumbs, I call them, right? That you say you could just, pick up on these little things. They're not all fleshed out yet, but to put them in, I think is a fun way to inspire without having to put a, ton of other work in it necessarily.
Yeah, Tim Shorts of Gothic Manor really taught me the value of terse writing, and making sure every paragraph carries its weight. And I try to think that through to the design of the stuff as well. So I came up with a very simplistic magic item called Viz, which is magic in physical form. And one Viz, you can, if you have a memorized first level spell, the effect of using one Viz is that you don't lose that spell from memory. You lose the Viz, but you won't lose the spell. And
Right.
if you want to keep a third level spell in memory, you need 3 Viz. And it's magic in physical form that naturally crops up of areas of high magic. So it's a very simple magic item, but it lends itself to a lot of flavor. You can do a lot of interesting things, like make springs of Viz, or make people fighting over sources of Viz. And so it plays it's not, I wouldn't say a major part of my setting, but it's
Right.
an undercurrent
Sure.
that exists throughout all of this, especially in the next region that I'll get to is the Blackmarsh region centered around the Smoking Bay, which was created uh, 2,500 years ago when the mountain that fell, and I leave it up to the DM to interpret it. Those who are more of a science fantasy bent can certainly interpret it as an asteroid.
Yeah.
And those who are more fantasy bent can interpret it as a god getting upset or whatever fantastic cause they want to assign to it. But it impacted this region, caused chaos, climate change for 500 years, caused the fall of the first civilization that arose from the Dawn Wars after the Dawn Wars in the Majestic Fantasy Realms. It's equivalent to the first dark age of our history that brought down the Bronze Age empires of Egypt, the Hittites, and Babylonia. And but the mountain that fell was rich in viz. So
Mhm.
when the chaos cleared up, all these races, dwarves, elves, humans, orcs, started coming to Blackmarsh and finding all these viz and all these artifacts as well. And again, leave it up to the DM whether they want to go the science fantasy route or the more fantasy route. But it also littered the landscape with artifacts, and they fought
Sure.
wars over it.
Right.
And brutal tribal wars over who would control this until the elves stepped in and basically cleaned them all out and invited a bunch of their allies, like the halflings of Newcomb, the dwarves of Bozak, and they imposed a peace and try to keep the peace in the region. And in
Right.
some cases, like the Ostrobards that are up here, they came invaded, but they were able to finally bring that war and turn them into allies. So they're just one more member of the alliance now. And so this whole place has a history centered around the impact of the Smoking Bay. And another thing, for those who have Blackmarsh, I expanded it to the west. And now I go into a little bit about the Cold Fells and the Mourne Hills, which has a bunch of goblins and goblin tribes living there and so forth. And
Yeah.
then and then we moved down to the Southlands, which was originally just this area here, but now the Southland includes this entire, this is your outdoor survival area where the wilderness reigns king.
Right.
And it has nomadic tribes like the Kubars and the Kubars of the Kubar Steppes, the Forsaken Plain. There used to be an elven kingdom called Silverwood until it was brought down, and now it's an orc-infested forest filled with ancient elven ruins and their magic. And the survivors of that lived in Silverdim. The Grand Kingdom expanded up through this way, which I'll get over, but they crossed the mountains a few decades ago and established Castle Westguard. And they basically, they're not coming here to conquest. They more or less come in here as friends. So they have a lot of trade going on with the dwarves. And there's lots of rooms for adventure. For example, Castle Belden is an exiled noble who was caught being a leader of the blood god of a cult devoted to the blood goddess Callis, the goddess of assassins. And when he was caught, he was able to escape with a small army. And now he is carved out a small realm here, and he's plotting his revenge on the Grand Kingdom.
Hmm.
And he's allied with the Drow, the Dark Elves of Night Portal Keep, who also have their own plans.
Now, this is system agnostic, by the way, right? This is like,
Yeah,
I mean, you could play it. This is a system agnostic setting. It favors earlier versions of D&D, I would
yeah,
imagine, correct?
yeah.
And so if you're playing any type of OSR, but you clearly could use this for whatever you're playing. If
Sure.
you're playing GURPS, go ahead. If you're playing Shadow Dark, if you're playing whatever you're playing, you could. This is a world in which you can play in, and I'm sure everything that you have statted and those things are a simple workaround to make it simple for your setting.
Yes, and long as your system of choice covers things like orcs, trolls, and giants and dragons, you got 90% of what you're going to need here, and the rest, you can just sub in whatever is unique about your system. Yeah, I mean, I did not run my Majestic Waterlands, not this, but I could, but my Majestic Waterlands, uh, I run using GURPS. I run using Fantasy Age. I run it using Fantasy Hero back in the 80s, when the
Yeah.
first edition of Fantasy Hero, and AD&D 1E. So all of this stuff works with with it. You know, just keep in mind, folks, though, I don't treat class and level as a mark of heroism. Some people do, and that's okay. But there's another tradition, the judge I would call it the Judges Guild tradition, because that's where Bob Bledsaw Sr. pioneered that in City State, where every character has a class and level is a mark of life experience. So a veteran would be like fourth or fifth level. They would be a respected professional at that level.
Hmm.
While first level characters are people just out of training camp, and that's how I treat it in my setting.
Right. When you're deciding this, do you just imagine some of the choices you make when you're doing this? Is there anything like there's some people who just don't want gnomes? Like we know people, right, that don't like gnomes in their settings or anywhere near them. So, is there anything here that's like, well, you're not going to find this here, and that's a creator's choice, right? A creator says, yeah, those aren't here. That's not a thing.
Uh, the only thing that doesn't, and I only really touch briefly on this, the only thing is that is quirky, I would say, is I don't have the outer planes.
Okay.
The gods, okay, so work with me on this, and
Yes.
I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
Okay.
I have this thing called a woad. What a woad is you can think of it as a pocket dimension, but it's still connected to the world. So normally your world, you can think the world as flat like this.
Right.
But imagine you can use magic or technology or whatever to pop a little bubble of reality like a balloon. So it's like this on your world. So if you travel like this, it's your normal distance, but you just happen to hit that little neck of that, you'll crawl out this, and all of a sudden, holy hell, why is it just taking so long?
Gotcha.
And in a later work, and it's on my blog too.
Well,
I
tell them where your
swear,
blog is. Tell them where your blog is.
oh, battentheattic.com.
There we go.
Or no, not battentheattic.com, battentheattic at blogspot.com. It's
Right.
the Bat in the
Links will be
Attic book.
below. Check out the blog. Lots of things there.
Yeah. So I have this, and you can map this. It's fairly straightforward to map, although you're going to have to wrap your head around it because every time I show it to people, it blows their mind. But it allows you to do these pocket dimension in a really fun and interesting way. Now, having said that, so I don't have the outer planes. Instead, all the gods created roads, big ones that are their realm, and somewhere in the world, and there's actually a connection to one of them in the northern marches to the Viking realm of Vingolf, because in my mythology, the Aesir already had their Ragnarok in the Dawn War, and now in my version, Thor survives and becomes Lord of the God, but his father Odin died in the Dawn War, and their new home is now called Vingolf, and there's a place where in the world where it's connected, and if you find out where it is and travel it and manage to make your way up, you can find yourself you're in Vingolf. And the Abyss is another example. The Abyss is a prison for the demon, but there is a place where people decide to screw us, don't let all the demons out.
There's a back door.
Yes. Well, no, it's actually the front door.
Oh, really? Okay.
It's where the gods punch through initially.
Oh, all right.
But however, there's still an astral plane. The astral plane is the medium in which reality resides. So if you're in the astral plane, you can look at the majestic fantasy realm, and in a weird way, you can see the world, but you can see all these little like balloon-like things of reality coming off of it. And so if I'm productive enough, I will eventually have something covering that. But that is the when you say backtracking to what prompted it, yes, that is the one thing I don't have. I don't have outer planes. I
Okay.
but everything else I do have. If it's in AD&D 1E, and it's been
Right.
released part of the D20 SRD at least, it's in here. I went for bog standard, and to get variety instead of making new things. Not saying I don't have some new things, but I generally go for depth. In other words,
Sure.
I have different kinds of dark elves. I have different kinds of dwarves. I have different kinds of halfling, and they their base stats are all halfling, but their cultures are different.
Are very different, right? And that's the designer, right? When, we want everything to be kind of, I think a lot of people, I should say this, a lot of people like their stuff just kind of vanilla. But I think in when you're designing, I'm kind of in the same ballpark where there's now, like I did a throwaway where I talked about in my world, there was a rebellion. The demigods rebelled against the gods, prompted by one of the other gods to
Mm-hmm.
get them all into fight. And I had a throwaway line in there, and I talked about the fact that the gods came because they were mortal and they ascended to godhood. And I had a line in there about architects, and I talked about the architects, whoever those are,
Right.
and the fact now that I haven't described them and anything like that, but now I have talking about worlds in Skyreach, which is the first city I designed. There's something called the Veil, and what was once thought was just a aurora borealis, like a seasonal kind of a thing. Turns out that it's a portal. It turns out it shows up, and we're not really sure. People are discovering little pieces and bits, and whenever I have that first adventure, something is probably going to come out of there. I have a
Nice.
table for that, so I don't know what's going to come out of there. I'm just going to roll it, and what is it? Either a friend or foe. So it's going to come from somewhere undeveloped yet, right? So it's just going to appear. And when it does, though, see what I get a kick out of this, because if it's bad, it's going to be really bad. Like it's not just like one thing that's going to come out of here. Like if it's undead, we're talking about like hundreds of undead. This place is like a combination. It's a combination of, uh,
Are you going to go the things that man is not meant to know route, so you can have your Cthulhu cake and eat it?
well, there is some Cthulhu cake in there. It's called the Dread. And
Okay.
the dread is it was there's that happens, but there's also the fact too that it's possible that the architects knew somehow that one of the gods was going to rebel and all these things, kind of this pre-notion, and so created this in case Kriesh was destroyed, that there's a way out. Maybe there's like,
Oh,
if this thing opens up at whatever time or whatever it does, then somehow maybe you escape. I don't know. But that's just kind of the feeling I get from it. That, talking about just planes, which I don't have any yet, but those planes will only probably be discovered if somebody's brave enough to go in, which we don't know that's going to happen. But the fun thing is, if they, like I said, if something comes out of there, it's going to be really bad. And because it's an area that's like a combination of Area 51 and Burning Man, like it is a small town that has big events. Like everybody shows up, right? And they wait for the veil to kind of appear. So if something does come out of there, I mean, there's some military forces that are like, at this point, nothing's really happened. Guys are like, why are we doing this? We come every year, nothing really happens. But one day it's going to happen. And whatever comes out of there is going to just eat people, and it's going to destroy all these onlookers, like the people at the, like in Independence Day at the top of the thing. They were like, yay, well, come on, aliens, we love you. And then they just blow it up. And
oh
that's
yeah.
probably what's going to happen. Something
You know,
bad
I,
like
I,
that.
I like I like how you started. You came up. You said the veil, okay, and then you described it as a shimmering or ballath and or borealis, and then you just started segging to your background. Yeah, so that's a good example. Sometimes you guys can, if you get, just think, don't worry if it sounds too simple, because sometimes that is evocative, you know, and then you made it your own when you thought, okay, I have this veil. It has something to do with magic, and it's like an aurora borealis, a shimmering curtain. And then it just got you thinking and thinking. And now you have this thing that's unique and you got a cool name to go with that's otherwise ordinary. But now that you added this stuff with that effect, so, and even if you don't think of something right away, I recommend to everybody just keep a notebook or a file on your computer where you jot these
Yeah.
ideas, and eventually it will coalesce together. Because that's what happened with my Majestic Borderlands a lot of time. I'll come up with this idea, not follow it up for a campaign or two, and then say, "Hey, but if I do this, then this, then this falls into place."
Yeah. Yeah, and the thing is too is that there's a whole festival now. That's another thing too is that the things that created out of other things. So the Veil just shows up, and now there's a festival. It's called the Starfall Festival, and so
Mhm.
and there's obviously there's people in town of Skyreach who is one NPC that goes out into the Veil amphitheater, which is just a bunch of rocks. It's just all these rocks you sit on like a big
Mhm.
amphitheater, and she goes out there and she occasionally finds little trinkets that maybe have fallen out of the veil at some point, and she collects them.
Maybe they can be Viz, huh?
They could be Viz, 100% be Viz, no doubt they could be Viz. Um, what do you hope? What do you hope when people? And by the way, the Kickstarter link will be down there. What do you hope DMs will get out of bringing Northern Reaches to their table?
I think they will save themselves a lot of time, that they'll find themselves not constrained but inspired to fill in those gaps that I left with their own ideas, and make it their own, and to make that process even easier. And I know I'm being a bit of a hard sell here, but I am going to release the text and the map under Creative Commons BY, and that means if you're so inspired and you like something, you feel free to publish it. And don't worry stepping on my toes. I'll continue. I am not going to do this master database uh, where I'm going to be a canon police and stuff. No, it's the people to make it their own, to do their own project.
Sure,
And where where I like to see people is, I like to see my stuff get people further down the road. So you have an idea for an RPG system, you don't have a setting for it. With Creative Commons, you can now use mine. And in fact, I have a good example. I have two good examples of that. One's not released, but one is. One is a bunch of guys in Spain are doing an OSR RPG. They have this world, but they like Blackmarsh. They like some of this stuff. They didn't have this tech. They had my Blackmarsh and some of my earlier stuff. And they said, Rob, can we use this in our product? Well, I said, you already have permission to use it, but thank you for asking. And sure, and that is a project I doubt I would ever gotten to. I wouldn't have the resources to do a Spanish translation and do a Spanish product, you know, fine tuned to that niche of the hobby. So these guys take it and run it. They released it. They did a beautiful map, and they're up and going. And I have another guy who had this system that his friend developed and who's given permission for him to do stuff with. But, and it's a fairly crunchy system, more like GURPS and basic role playing it is an OSR. But for him, it's a labor of love. And I gave him my Majestic Fantasy Realm. He he helped me with review it and gave me some suggestions. And in turn, he's going to use it for his project. Uh, and whenever he gets around to sharing it, and it gets him further along the way, and it helped him kind of, because I have all these monsters, it helped him structure his product so he includes the things that he feels he needs to include.
sure, sure. Well, if anybody has any questions or anything like that, where can people get in contact with you? Like, of course, all the links will be down below, but where can people either ask questions? Of course, if you're watching this, you can leave comments down below. Rob may come back. If you have questions about the setting, the Kickstarter, anything like that, you can leave comments down there. You can go over to the Kickstarter. Links to the Kickstarter will be down there. You can go check out the
Uh,
information there. But where can people get in touch with you if they need to?
Conley at batintheattic.com.
There we
All one.
go.
And then But probably the best way to get a hold of me is leave a message on one of my Kickstarters. I already have a couple messages from non-backers, so that seems to work.
Okay.
I guess you click on my profile and you can leave me an actual message.
There we go. There we go. Well, Rob, thanks for coming on today. Thanks for just
Okay.
sharing your creation. Thanks for sharing your
Oh,
fantasy.
wait a minute. Do we have 2 more minutes?
We do. What would you like to
Yeah.
do?
Okay. Hold on. Be right back.
I thought you were Joe. Go take a pee break.
No, I can hold mine for a lot longer than his. I don't know. You should ask a refund from God for it given the low capacity or do an upgrade. So anyway, this is what people are going to get. This is the first map. It's a 12-inch by 18 map combined, and there's red lines showing you where the map borders are. There's going to be a player version that's going to omit the hex numbers, the layers, and any any settlement that are not common knowledge, like that
Hmm.
Rebel Baron Belden I talked about.
Right.
But this is the centerpiece maps. 12-inch by 18-inch. Each hex is about 5/8 of an inch uh, high. So this one's the Great Glacier. This one is the Wild North, and then this one this one is Blackmarsh, and this one is Northport.
So how many
That,
maps in total would they get from the Kickstarter?
there's one more.
Okay.
And then, because I know some of you are going to say, but Rob, what about this corner area? That's going to kind of stink. And you'd be right. So that's why, because honestly, the cost of these maps is dirt cheap. It's really the shipping you got to worry about. I made a combined version of the corner.
Hey, look at that.
Yeah. So again, with red lines indicating where the map borders are. So you'll have that. And so all of these maps, so you'll get uh, there are 6 maps here for the referee, and there are going to be 6 maps here for the players, and
Wow.
that's what you're going to get.
And the actual settings, that's PDF only, or is that you can buy on demand, print on demand through drive through?
Yeah, it'll be a guidebook. It will be similar. It'll be a 200-page version of something like this with
It'd be soft cover,
and hardcover, your choice.
soft and cover. Okay.
So this is the mock-up, the cover. I have to before I show this officially. Uh, I'm going to have to make more coats of arms, and this time, unlike my Black Marsh, well, on my Black Marsh, only the top coat of arms is actually something real in my campaign. That's the coat of arms of the Grand Kingdom. But here, all the coats of arms are going to be real. So this is Castle Blackmarsh coat of arms. This is uh, Duchy of Northport. This is the Grand Kingdom, of course, and this is Castle Taldane coats of arms. They're Vikings, so they use round shields.
Ah, there we go. There we
So
go.
I need to make a couple more, and then I'll be able to show this. But yeah, so I highlight my map, and then I have little vignette pictures showing, and it's going to be 11, 8.5 by 11.
Well, let me tell you what, that those are going to be super nice on somebody's table, Rob. They're going to be very nice on my table, Rob. Let me just say, while I am uh
Oh
journey.
well, and I'll include a 4 foot wide by. I'll include a because I draw these in what they call vector graphics. I can export these at any size, and so I'll make sure I include if somebody's crazy enough to make a tablecloth out of it, they could.
There we go. That's fantastic. Well, Rob, thank you again for your time. Thanks for sharing all your knowledge with us today. And thank you
Yeah.
for this Kickstarter. Listen, go over to the Kickstarter. Links are down below. Go over there and get this thing. There's 24 days left, you said. 24 days left. It is a great Kickstarter to get on. There's lots of resources. You're not going to be sad when you get all these fantastic maps and all these worlds to play in. And I want to encourage you, like I said, for me, be sure all the links down below. Go ahead and make your own world, by the way. Nothing wrong with
Sure.
that. Go ahead and make your own world within Rob's world. There's places there
Yeah.
that are undeveloped. Make your own. Go ahead and follow the 33 steps and create your own stuff there. And but get over there. Go ahead and get in on the Kickstarter and get yourself some good stuff. Rob, thanks again, buddy.
Yeah. And just remember, folks, you're not just backing me, you're backing yourself because it will be your world too.